A billionaire father witnesses true kindness. And it changes everything. What if a billionaire's routine coffee stop became the turning point of his life and the one moment that forced him to face a truth he'd been avoiding for years? He had everything, but couldn't connect with the one person who mattered most until this moment. And it ended up transforming many others along the way. This isn't just a story about wealth or success. It's a story about seeing someone for who they truly are. If you've ever experienced or witnessed a small act of kindness that left a deep impact, feel free to share it in the comments below. Because sometimes the most powerful stories are the ones we carry in our own hearts. The man who had everything except peace. Richard Langston, a powerful billionaire and CEO, had built an empire that stretched from the skyscrapers of Manhattan to vineyards in Napa Valley. With towering headquarters, luxury properties, and global recognition, he was admired by many and envied by more. His name was synonymous with success. He made headlines, shaped markets, and even advised world leaders. But behind closed doors, Richard's life was much quieter. He lived in a mansion that felt more like a museum than a home, surrounded by priceless art, and yet haunted by a feeling of emptiness. No matter how high his achievements stacked, there was one part of his life that remained untouched by his wealth and status: his daughter, Lily. Lily was born with severe cerebral palsy, and though she had the brightest smile and eyes full of wonder, she couldn't walk, talk, or do what most children her age could. Richard had spared no expense trying to improve her condition. From renowned institutions like the Mayo Clinic in Minnesota to expert consultations at Johns Hopkins in Maryland, he searched relentlessly for a solution, some miracle that would give his daughter a more normal life. But nothing ever brought the results he hoped for. Despite the countless therapists, medical breakthroughs, and customized equipment, Lily remained bound to her wheelchair, often silent, always fragile. And as years passed, a gnawing realization began to take root in Richard's heart. Maybe this wasn't something he could fix. Maybe he needed to stop trying to change her and start learning how to truly be there for her. That realization terrified him more than any boardroom negotiation or financial risk ever had. A daughter's silent struggle. Lily was born with cerebral palsy, a condition that would shape every aspect of her life from the moment she entered the world. She couldn't walk, couldn't speak, and relied on others for even the most basic daily needs. For her father, Richard, each diagnosis, each new limitation felt like a punch to the soul. He couldn't understand how someone so small could carry such a heavy burden. From infancy to childhood, Lily's world was filled with hospitals, therapy sessions, and adaptive equipment. Richard, determined to give her every possible advantage, poured millions into treatment. He flew her across continents to meet with the top neurologists, enrolled her in cutting-edge clinical trials, and filled their home with highly trained caregivers. Yet no matter what he did, the same heartbreaking truth remained. Lily was locked inside a body that didn't cooperate with her bright, curious mind. She would smile, sometimes giggle softly when she heard music or when the wind brushed her face, but she couldn't say what she was thinking. And that silence, that inability to truly connect, broke Richard in ways he never admitted aloud. He could solve global business problems in a single meeting. Yet here he was, unable to unlock a way to help his daughter express herself. More than anything, Richard wished for just one conversation with Lily, one moment of shared understanding. But for all his wealth and power, he couldn't buy that connection. It left him feeling powerless and more alone than ever before. A modest cafe, a life-changing encounter, one crisp autumn day, acting on his therapist's suggestion to spend more quality time with Lily outside of their controlled world, Richard wheeled her into a modest little cafe tucked in the corner of his neighborhood. The cafe wasn't part of his usual routine. No polished marble floors, no valet service, no exclusive roasts flown in from remote plantations. But it was different in a comforting way. It felt real. The place had mismatched wooden chairs, chipped but clean tables, and shelves lined with old books and board games reminiscent of a cozy, independent coffeehouse you might stumble upon in a small American town, or even a rustic corner of a local Starbucks. The air was rich with the scent of cinnamon, roasted coffee beans, and something sweet baking in the back, maybe apple pie. Soft jazz music played from a speaker tucked into a corner, and a hand-drawn chalkboard displayed the day's specials in cheerful, wobbly letters. As Richard wheeled Lily to a table by the window, he noticed how the warm sunlight cast golden patches across the floor. He wasn't used to noticing these kinds of details, but today, something made him pause. Perhaps it was Lily's calm expression or the peaceful energy of the place, but for the first time in a long time, he felt just slightly less burdened. The cafe was more than a backdrop. It was the beginning of something, a place that unknowingly held the key to everything he had been missing, a setting so simple, yet destined to shift the course of his life in ways he couldn't yet imagine. Grace, the waitress with a gentle soul. That's where he met Grace. Grace was a new waitress in her late 20s, with a warm smile and a gentle demeanor that instantly put people at ease. She had an air of quiet strength about her, someone who had seen hardship but chose kindness anyway. Her steps were calm and measured. Her voice carried warmth without effort, and her curly chestnut hair was always tucked behind one ear, as if ready to listen, not just with ears, but with her whole heart, and her eyes always seemed to search for the human within every stranger. When Grace saw Lily, something subtle but powerful shifted in her expression, not pity but a gentle recognition. It was as if she saw straight through the wheelchair and into the essence of the girl sitting in it. While many might avert their gaze or offer awkward sympathy, Grace did neither. She didn't just see a child with limitations, she saw a full, feeling person deserving of attention and dignity. She didn't rush over with exaggerated sweetness or forced politeness. Instead, she approached with quiet intention, as though this moment mattered. And it did, because in that instant, she wasn't just another server delivering orders, she was someone capable of changing the energy in the room. She saw Lily, not the diagnosis, not the challenges, just Lily. That authenticity struck Richard in a way he hadn't expected. In his world, most people offered forced smiles or calculated gestures, especially when they recognized his face. But Grace didn't seem to recognize him at all, or if she did, it didn't matter. Her attention was on Lily, where it belonged. A connection beyond words. She knelt down to Lily's eye level, a simple gesture that spoke volumes. Her voice, calm and melodic, gently broke through the silence as she greeted Lily not with pity, but with presence. Grace didn't speak loudly or slowly, like many people did around Lily. Instead, she spoke to her as one would to a friend, with respect and genuine curiosity. Lily didn't respond, at least not in the way most people would expect, but her eyes lit up, ever so slightly, a soft sparkle that Richard hadn't seen in a long time. It was as though Lily understood she was being seen, not just noticed, but truly acknowledged. And Grace smiled back at her, as if they'd exchanged a full conversation. Richard sat there, frozen. In all his years, through all the treatments, consultations, and efforts to improve his daughter's life, no one had ever made her feel quite so human. He realized, in that moment, how rare this kind of connection truly was. Grace wasn't trying to fix Lily. She wasn't trying to help her speak or stand. She was simply being with her, fully without judgment. For the first time, someone was treating his daughter not as a burden, not as a challenge to overcome, but as a whole person, beautiful, valuable, and deserving of kindness. And that changed everything. A new routine, a renewed heart. Richard and Lily kept coming back. Even his personal assistant began to notice a shift in him, fewer the late nights at the office, fewer curt replies. It was subtle at first, but those closest to Richard could see it. Something inside him was changing. What had started as a one-time visit slowly became part of their weekly rhythm. Week after week, the cozy cafe with its mismatched chairs and cinnamon-scented air became a sanctuary, a space where both father and daughter could simply be. Grace always remembered their orders: coffee with just a splash of cream for Richard, and a hot chocolate with extra whipped cream for Lily. But more than that, she remembered them. She greeted them not as customers, but as familiar faces. She always crouched to Lily's level when she spoke to her, and each time, Lily's eyes would lock onto hers with a gentle curiosity, as if she recognized Grace's sincerity in a world that often overlooked her, asking about her day as if she expected an answer, as if Lily's silence was still a language worth listening to. It was in these moments that something began to soften in Richard. He found himself looking forward to their visits, not just for Lily's sake, but for his own. The cold distance he once maintained started to melt, replaced by something more open, more vulnerable. He started noticing Lily's reactions, more the flicker of her eyes when she heard her name, the way her fingers curled slightly when she was excited. Grace had given him a gift he never anticipated, the ability to reconnect with his daughter, not through grand gestures, but through the quiet consistency of kindness. And little by little, almost without realizing it, Richard began to change. He smiled more, he listened more, and he started to truly see his daughter again. More than money can buy, he realized that no amount of money could replace what Grace offered: connection, presence, and respect. In all the years Richard had spent chasing solutions through investments, through technology, through elite consultations, he had overlooked the most basic, most human element of all: empathy. Grace hadn't arrived with credentials or scientific insight, but her ability to see Lily, to truly acknowledge her, had done something nothing else could. Richard began to reflect on his entire life's philosophy. For decades, he had been taught that problems required fixing, that with the right resources, anything could be solved. But here was a woman who didn't fix anything, she simply showed up. And in doing so, she healed a wound far deeper than any doctor could reach. There was no transaction involved, no hidden agenda. Grace gave her attention, her time, and her heart freely. It was a reminder that sometimes presence is more powerful than any prescription. Her simple, unwavering kindness had started to bridge a gap between father and daughter that no amount of therapy ever had. And in that realization, Richard found something he hadn't known he was searching for. Peace, not in the form of answers, but in the form of understanding. A life-changing proposal. Then one afternoon, he couldn't hold it in anymore. Something inside him stirred with such urgency that it overcame the reserved persona he typically wore in public. He watched as Grace carefully handed Lily her hot chocolate, steadying the cup so it wouldn't spill, smiling with that same quiet joy she always carried. It wasn't just her actions, it was the way she made Lily feel as though she mattered. Overwhelmed by emotion, Richard stood up and gently called out, "Grace, wait." She turned, her brows raising slightly in concern. "Yes? Is everything okay?" "No," Richard said, his voice faltering with emotion. "But you've made it better. You've done more for my daughter than all the doctors and dollars ever could. You made her feel seen. You made me see her again." Grace looked genuinely taken aback, a soft blush rising in her cheeks. For a moment, she seemed overwhelmed not by the compliment, but by the deep sincerity behind it. Her eyes shimmered slightly, as though no one had ever acknowledged her impact in such a heartfelt way. It was a mixture of surprise, gratitude, and quiet validation that made her voice catch before she spoke. "I'm just doing my job," she replied modestly. "I just believe everyone deserves to be treated like a person, and I can tell how much you love her, even if it's hard sometimes." Her words hit deeper than she could have known. Richard had heard countless opinions from pediatric neurologists and developmental specialists at some of the top children's hospitals in the country, like Boston Children's and CHOP, Children's Hospital of Philadelphia, but no one had ever spoken about his relationship with Lily in such a simple, honest way. That moment changed everything for him. He reached into the inside pocket of his coat and pulled out a sleek, silver business card. "I'm not just a CEO," he said. "I also run a foundation. It's dedicated to supporting children with disabilities and their families. And I want to offer you something." He extended the card to her, his voice steady now. "Let me help you create a center, your own space, built around the same love and respect you've shown my daughter. A place where kids like Lily can feel seen, heard, and loved every single day." Grace hesitated, her fingers trembling as she took the card. Her eyes welled with emotion, but her smile never wavered. She nodded slowly, her voice just above a whisper. Her hands clutched the card as though it was something sacred, holding onto it like it contained not just an opportunity, but a purpose she had quietly dreamed of her entire life. "Yes, I'd love that. More than anything." A dream brought to life. Months later, that center became a reality. It stood as more than just a building. It was a beacon of hope and warmth in a world that too often looked away from those with special needs. The walls were painted in cheerful colors, adorned with artwork created by the very children who now filled its rooms with laughter and life. There were sensory rooms, therapy corners, cozy reading nooks, and open spaces where wheelchairs could glide freely. Grace poured every ounce of herself into making the center a place where no child ever felt invisible. She handpicked a team of compassionate staff, trained volunteers with patience and heart, and personally welcomed each child and their family. Parents often wept with gratitude, saying they had never felt such acceptance anywhere else. And every child who walked or rolled through its doors was greeted with the same kindness, patience, and joyful energy Grace had once shown to Lily. In every small act, from adjusting a blanket to celebrating a small breakthrough, Grace's love echoed. What she had once offered to just one little girl in a cafe, she now extended to dozens of children every single day. The center wasn't just a fulfillment of Richard's offer, it was a living, breathing testament to what empathy could build. One morning, Richard witnessed a little boy with severe mobility issues smile for the first time in weeks as he painted with a custom-adapted brush. His parents, standing behind him, wept quietly. It was that kind of place where small victories felt monumental, and hope wasn't just offered, but lived every single day. It was the embodiment of Grace's soul. And to Richard, watching it flourish wasn't just rewarding, it was redemptive. Through Grace's dream, he saw a new kind of legacy being built, one that would long outlive them both. A legacy of love and compassion. Richard still visits the cafe, though now, not as the distant, emotionally burdened man who once sat in silence by the window. He remembers clearly the first time he stepped into that modest place, weighed down by guilt and uncertainty, unsure of how to connect with his own daughter. Today, he enters with calm purpose, often greeted by familiar smiles and warm memories. That cafe, once a reluctant stop on a therapist's advice, became the starting point of something far greater than he could have imagined. But now, he visits the center too. He'll often sit quietly in a corner, watching the vibrant energy of the space Grace created. A place once born from an unexpected act of kindness. The laughter of children echoes through the halls, their joy unconstrained by the challenges they face. Some draw, others dance, and some simply smile, safe in a place where they are unconditionally accepted. He watches Grace move through the rooms like a quiet force of nature. She offers words of encouragement, shares gentle laughs, and celebrates even the smallest milestones with the children. Her presence is steady, her spirit tireless. To Richard, it is awe-inspiring. He sees not just a woman fulfilling her calling, but someone who has transformed pain into purpose. And every time he sees her working with those kids, he remembers the moment she first knelt beside Lily in that little cafe, the moment that altered the course of his life. Because Grace didn't just change his daughter's life, she changed his entire worldview. She reminded him what it means to truly love, to be present, and to build something that matters. Richard's legacy, once measured in business ventures and boardroom deals, has taken on a deeper, more meaningful dimension. Now, it is shaped by empathy, service, and the ripple effects of a single act of grace. Key takeaways from the story. This touching story reminds us of a powerful truth. Sometimes, the most valuable thing you can offer isn't money or status, but genuine presence and empathy. Richard Langston spent his whole life solving problems with wealth and influence, but only when he began to truly connect did transformation happen. This story shows us that love doesn't demand perfection, it requires patience. Even the smallest act of kindness can spark massive change. Real influence comes not from what you do for yourself, but from how you inspire others to live with purpose. Personal reflection. Reading this story left me not just moved, but reminded that every human being deserves to be seen and valued. No matter your social standing or personal challenges, we all have the power to touch someone's heart through simple kindness. This story also reaffirmed my belief in the value of small, intentional actions, the power of listening, and the quiet strength of people like Grace, those who don't seek attention but make the biggest difference. If this story touched your heart too, don't forget to hit like and help spread this message of hope to others. Comment below to share your thoughts. We believe everyone has experienced a grace moment in their life. And if you'd love more inspirational stories like this one, subscribe to our channel Toch Story and tap the bell so you never miss a new video. Thank you for watching and being part of the Toch Story family.